There are millions of people who are struggling with their identity. There are millions of people who are struggling with abusive parents or socioeconomically depressed backgrounds, right? And those people didn't kill 33 people.
That's a great story, but it's a piss poor excuse to let a psychopath walk.
Thank you for doing this, because I feel that in contrast of shows and true crimes that we have seen, I think this show is about healing, how people heal from something that happened. And I wonder, what drew you to Elizabeth Pierce's story? What was the most important thing that you wanted to play and show to the audience?
Yeah, I didn't know anything about Elizabeth Piest or the Piest family before I started approaching this story. And Michael Chernus, actually, who had been an old friend of mine, he called me and told me about Elizabeth and that she was really a hero in a lot of ways, as was their whole family, for kind of helping to stop Gacy in many ways. And that was something I wasn't aware of. I didn't realize how hard she worked and how hard her family worked to find justice for these victims. And that was kind of astonishing to me and inspiring.
When you tell her story, how do you not let her grief affect you as a creating a character? Because it's so important for her having that grief, but you're an actress, you didn't live that.
Yeah. It's a really hard balance. I think I was lucky in many ways because, I didn't have that many days per episode, so my body could kind of recover. But like you said, I mean, it is about healing. It's a show about people who had to go through these really difficult things. So in many ways, it felt like I was honoring them by walking that journey that they walked, and in many ways, I just kept them at the forefront of my mind and tried to just allow that experience to go through me.
Yeah, because you are the first person that we see on the show. Like, you are this face. Okay, we know what happened, and then the show starts, but we see you, and then we start figuring it out. Okay, we know what happened, but the characters doesn't know what happened.
Yeah.
And it has to be difficult when you know the story, but you have to play that you don't know anything. I think you do that because you're a great actress.
Yeah, we shot that sequence months into late in the process. And it was so overwhelming shooting that day because of what we'd already shot at that point. And I thought it was going to be a pretty light day, and it turned out to be very emotional for everybody because we were all thinking about that it was the last time they would see each other.
But also the show touched something interesting for me, and I was talking to Patrick about the system, how it failed to people, because this guy could have been caught many times before he killed people, and I felt even back then, the 70s, the system still failed, and people are affected to it, and the show, and they show to the audience how when the system failed, what happened. And how involved, because you also have some scenes with Gabriel, and you two are important. And how was that relationship with Gabriel and his character? Because when system failed to victims and to the police, it just these results that we have usually.
Yeah. I mean, we all talked a lot about the bigger story that we're all telling in terms of that, and that was, I think, a central reason why a lot of the other actors wanted to be part of this as well. Gabriel and Badge, people who were playing that side of the story. And we talked about how, I had just as long a relationship with Gabriel and Badge through these years and years and years as with a family member in going through this process together. So the story we're telling is people who have a long relationship together. It's not just a woman and a detective. They actually build a relationship together, and they fail. She gets failed by this person she has a relationship with ultimately, and somebody that you expect will help you. And again, I talked a lot about in the process about Elizabeth. Part of that story is a family that had a certain level of privilege in thinking that the police would listen to them and would help them and be able to help them. And then part of the story is people learning that is not the way that works. And that's part of their story, is us watching people who thought like, well, they're supposed to fix this and they're supposed to help me, and learning firsthand how broken the system is, and that they had put their trust in a system that doesn't work. And that's also a big part of their story.
But I also feel due to recent events and in many other shows, how big a responsibility you have as an actress, because you're showing a real person, real situations, and there's still family of Elizabeth alive. Do you feel that you honor her, like her family can watch the show and feel like this is what happened, and I don't feel like my name or my family is being in the mix of some sensationalism situation?
It was very important to me before I said yes to this project that the ethos behind it and that the heart was in the right place and that we were telling the story for the right reason. And there's not a lot out there about Elizabeth or about her family. So to me, I felt like, okay, I'll keep the details of who she is private. That's intentionally private. But then I can really use this opportunity to not just honor Elizabeth, but also the responsibility is that in many ways we're experiencing what some of the other families experienced through Elizabeth. So in some ways, I'm not only telling Elizabeth's story, but I'm thinking about a lot of the other families as well. And I really hope that anybody who watched it, who has gone through something like this, would feel like their journey was authentically represented and that they would feel seen. I hope so.
Marin, I just want to compliment you, because from seeing you from comedy, now seeing you in this role, I think it's
Oh,
amazing. And
thank you.
I'm a huge fan of your work, and I was very, very pleased seeing you in a different role, and you did it amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank
Because,
you so much.
like I told you, you're the first person that we see on the show, and you are the
Yeah.
lead, and everything's dark, mist, and we feel the sense of your character worthiness. And I just couldn't stop watching after that.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Ruben Peralta from the Dominican
Rubén,
Republic. How are you?
¿qué
Hola.
pasó?
Hi. Hola.
One of the things that I enjoy the most about the show, it's like it's the violence is not shown. What is important is the victims and the investigators and the relationship that they create. This is what because I was expecting to see something like in recent shows and then documentaries and everything. They wanna like fill the screen with violence to attract people, but here's more human. Here's about the people that were affected to it. Is that any change on set? The emotional stress or the emotional situation is different, or how do you set that boundaries on set? Because for me, it's more important how's the mentality in a set when you know violence is not, it's not going to be a main character here.
Do you want to say that?
No,
Yes.
that's really well stated, Ruben. I think it created an environment where we knew what we were going into early, because they brought us all in a month early, and we were sitting there rehearsing for 3 weeks, just dialing in what these personal interactions are, and that is the truth of that storytelling at its heart. It's just what's happening, like what's happening with these people, how, and this looming kind of overarching kind of shadow of our story becomes that. It becomes kind of like this. Patrick's kind of articulated this way many times, and rightfully so. He becomes this. It's not about him, but because he looms over it all, it is kind of the shape of things, and so I think I found that we had such a huge cast. I mean, how many people? I mean, just like 200 actors on the cast list, and many of which were young kind of upstarts. A lot of the young men playing the victims this is their first job, and of course we had these great, just incredible New York veterans, and then me from Texas, so just kind of an outlier. But but it was what they built. It was an environment for us to just just explore each other, explore the humanity of these people, explore how ordinary and they were, and how just. And I keep saying, what the mundanity of their heroism was, the people on the law enforcement side, and of course their failures. But in the end, it's just about the crossroad, Gacy being the crossroad through which all these families intersect.
How about you, Patrick? Because you're the creator of this. Like, you didn't want to show violence. You didn't want to show that to us.
Yeah, that was an early decision. So there were a couple of early decisions that we made. Number one was that we would never show any of the murders. I'll comment on that in a second. Number two was that we were going to delve into the victims' stories, and that was not because we were trying to set out to do something special. It just was we were trying to find another way into telling a true crime story, and this became sort of our North Star. Was if we tell these stories about these victims that are not related to John Wayne Gacy in any way, if we're getting into what their hopes and their dreams and the tragedies and their challenges and the setbacks in their lives, that by really centering the show on these people, it would give us the freedom to be able to also explore from an objective lens John Wayne Gacy. Because there's no way that we can't tell John Wayne Gacy's story, but so often you slide into this salacious or gratuitous or glorification, or you're excusing him away in some way. But by keeping the focus over on the victims, we were able to say to the audience without saying it that, yes, you can say John Wayne Gacy did these things because he was struggling with his identity. You can say that John Wayne Gacy did these things because he came from an abusive alcoholic father, right? But there are millions of people who are struggling with their identity. There are millions of people who are struggling with abusive parents or socioeconomically depressed backgrounds, right? And those people didn't kill 33 people. And so we are drawing a stark relief. There's a stark relief between these two stories that held us in good stead. And the last thing I'll say about the lack of violence is number one, we did it because we felt it was disservice to the memories of the victims and the victims' families to show it. That's part one. But part two is that I learned something on Dr. Death, one of my previous shows, which we never showed the surgeries, but everyone talked about how we showed the surgeries.
Yeah.
Right? They imagined what we did. And we sort of had a similar approach here, where I am positive that when people get into episode 6, which is really the episode that explores John Wayne Gacy's crimes, people will come away with it thinking that they saw the crimes or they saw the murders, but we don't ever put anything on camera. So their imaginations will fill in the gaps, and that's all that they need.
But also, I feel that you speak about system failure, also
Correct.
for the victims, also for the police. And I wonder what kind of investigation, because I heard I read that you wrote the part for Gabriel, and why Gabriel, and why focusing also in system failure is so important, because it still have the system failure from so many people.
So I'll answer the Gabriel part first. Look, I've been a fan of his work for a long time. There's and the more that I got to know Gabriel in being the actor portraying Tovar, the more I was convinced that my gut was right about it, which was simply that I felt that there's a spirituality to Gabriel the person that he emanates in any of the roles that he's in. I can't say it any other way. It feels spiritual to me in his performances. And Tovar, the things that we knew about Tovar, the real Tovar, it felt like there was this inward-looking part of him that was haunted by the fact that he may have been incapable of finding all of the victims. And you just sort of felt this spirituality about Tovar too. So the second that it came down to who would we cast in this role, the first name on the list was Gabe. And the idea that A, he was available, which is a miracle unto itself, and B, I'll take it. I didn't mean any of it. I just wanted to hug. That's all it really was. No, and B, that he would say yes to us. I mean, and I got one more thing to say, and then I'll get to the other part, which is just that he also was this amazing presence on set. Right, like he was always available. He was always around to try to buoy spirits or to have just a conversation. And the conversation was with everybody from a visiting executive down to the PAs, where he just wanted to spend time with people. And that is a true leader. And that is, as somebody whose job it is to lead, having a group of people around you that are helping to take some of that off of you and really truly make it an ensemble, not just on screen but off screen, is a gift unto itself. And so I'm always grateful for the fact that Gabe was available and also said yes. I always am delving into systemic failures, and in this case, it was the systemic failure around the police, specifically the Chicago PD. They had multiple opportunities to be able to stop Gacy, and be it lack of communication or their own prejudices that clouded their judgments, they were part of the puzzle that allowed him to get away with what he got away with. But I don't want anyone to come away from our conversation thinking that we are demonizing the police, because yes, we're telling the true story about how Chicago failed to act, but on the flip side, you've got all of these officers who he is the leader of, representing in our show, who dedicated months of their lives to being in that pit to ensure that they were able to uncover and identify as many victims as possible. And each of those men, it was entirely men, they came away with trauma unto themselves. They didn't call it PTSD, but they came away with trauma that affected their family lives, that affected their work lives. And we are showing them as heroes as much as we are not showing the police as villains, but the system that failed as one of the primary villains.